How are we doing, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be my feedback for Awakened Corsair. It's really going to be focusing on PvE. Now, there's just a couple of things I'll mention about PvP, but it's just way too early to give any proper, realistic feedback for PvP. Just not enough. I haven't had enough time. I don't think anyone really has had enough time to really learn the class to its full potential yet. So I'll say just two things I think for PvP as early feedback, but really this is going to be on the PvE side. Now, I've experienced how much damage this class is doing with its Awakened kit in high-end grind zones, namely Sakraya and Star's End. I will say that Star's End grind is pretty good. It's not the best, but I would say it's definitely above average when we compare it to other classes in the game. But it does considerably start falling off when we get into Sakraya, and I heard that it's not so good in the other more end game grind spots from PC players that have been playing with it and experimenting and doing their best to improve their trash numbers. I really do think it just needs a little bit of damage buffs in some of the awakening skills to help it perform better in these areas. And to give you guys some context, on console, I'm pulling 5,000 trash an hour at Sakraya, which is pretty low. On my Ninja, I'm pulling around the 5.5. On my Sage, when I try hard, I can get up to 6.2, but normally it's around the 6,000 trash per hour mark. So you can see that there's a pretty big gap between these classes. Now, even if I was to refine the combo, with the current damage available on the Awakened kit for Corsair, I don't see it going much higher than it currently is, because it does rely on your left trigger B, which is Shift F. That skill, the anchor that drops out of the sky, has got a high cooldown, so because you're kind of relying on this, it does bottleneck you. So I think the way it needs to be buffed is to allow you to use other skills and not have to use that one to clear. Because right now, if you don't use the anchor skill, the clear just takes too long with the other skills that are available. If you use the anchor skill, great, you got a decent clear speed. Still a little bit slow, but if you have to wait for the anchor skill every time, it doesn't matter what your clear speed is, because then you're bottlenecked by that skill. So on your screens now, you're going to see the skills I think are the best contenders for buffs, and I'll go through the reasons why they're listed in the order that you see in just a moment. But to get started with, I think the best three skills that can receive PvE damage buffs specifically would be to Flow Render Patraca, Close Quarter Charge, and Wind Piercer Patraca. These are all low cooldowns of under 10 seconds, which guarantees use on every single pack. Therefore, that's going to help you excel your numbers and be able to keep your high clear speed pack to pack. They've also got really good range. Unfortunately, they aren't protected. Wind Piercer is protected on the charge, but not on the hit. So there is a slight drawback to these skills. But because of the AoE and the cooldown, I think if these skills were to receive the damage buffs, and pretty decent ones at that, that's going to help our grind a lot. The anchor skill, I don't believe giving it a damage buff is not going to help, because it just bottlenecks us because of the cooldown in PvE. Obviously, you could reduce the cooldown on it, but then that's going to affect PvP, so I don't think that's realistic. That's why it's not on your screen here. Now, good skills to give damage buffs to would be Pirate's Life for me and Ocean's Allure. Now, I do rate these under the three skills above because their AoE is not as good. They have a little bit of AoE, but nowhere near the range or width of the three skills above. However, the added advantage they do have is they have lower cooldowns, some of the lowest cooldowns in the kit. So you can technically even use them more than once well, especially Pirate's Life for me, you can use it more than once in a rotation if it does get a buff. So buffs on these would be good, but if you're limited to the number of skills that can be buffed, I'd still say the top three are better because of the AoE size. The advantage of Pirate's Life for me specifically, though, it is also a super armor, so this would be a pretty good one to buff in my opinion. Now, okay skills to buff, we've got Crow's Mark and Sun Shielder Patraca. These are higher cooldowns, therefore that's why I say it's okay. If they were to both get buffed, maybe we can rotate one out, one for one pack or one for another pack, but Crow's Mark AoE length is really good, but width is pretty bad. It's more of a single target line AoE kind of CC. It doesn't really have much width to it. So there is that drawback as well for Crow's Mark. Sun Shielder Patraca is a really great skill. Now, one buff you can make to make it a really good pulling skill is to please remove the PvE stiff on it, so we can get great PvE pulls. Obviously, in some areas, it's probably one of the best pulling skills that where mobs don't get stiffed, but other areas where they do, it does fall short at that point. And other kind of buffs you can give it, if you were to take 2 seconds off their cooldown, so bring Crow's Mark to 10 and Shield Patraca to 12, as well as giving them damage buffs, that would be pretty awesome for PvE. But that again is a little bit unrealistic because these are pretty good damage skills in PvP. They may not have CCs attached to them, but Crow's Mark is a forward guard and Sun Shielder is a super armor, and they both have a lot of range. So that might be a bit too strong for the PvP area. But, you know, later down the line, if people say that this class needs a little bit of help in the PvP, maybe this can be taken into consideration then. But those are my opinions of these skills that require buffs, and I would say just raw damage numbers for PvE only. I don't think 100% crit will help them. The reason I don't think that is because I've been told by multiple members in the community that the way that the crit hit rate stacks in the game when you buff yourself is additive. So if you've got 50% crit, which I think all these skills have 50% crit, and you do a 20% add-on, that takes you to 70% crit. Then you also have your skill, the back right trigger, which is back right mouse button. I can't remember the name, unfortunately, as of right now. That gives you a 24% crit hit rate for 10 seconds. So that takes you to 99% crit, and just the food buff, which gives you a couple of crit on your sheet, which is 2, I think gives you 2 crit on your sheet, plus your armors and stuff. You've always basically got 3 crit when you're grinding, no matter what. So you get an extra 15% crit rate from your sheet. So you're already at that 100%. So crit hit rate on all these skills are 100% when grinding if you use the buffs properly, which I am doing when grinding, and I'm still capped at 5 crit as a cryo, like I've mentioned. So those are the buffs and the reason and what should be buffed. So 100% crit rate I don't think will help it. I just think we do need some raw damage buffs. Now, if the crit rate isn't additive, it's cumulative, then maybe that would definitely help at that point. But obviously the devs would know more than we do, so I'll leave that to them. So for PvP feedback, I'm just going to keep it really short here. Close quarters suppressed and close quarters high spirits, if you could just give it a very slight width and length increase, that would go a long way. Right now it's very akin to heart aiming, which requires a lot of precision. On Ninja it's pretty easy to get the heart aiming off because of the micro positioning you can do in that class with the movement skills it has available. You don't have that option here on Corsair. It doesn't have a lot of micro movement, so it's very fiddly trying to CC or re-CC people with these skills. So if you can make it more akin to, let's say, Succession Foxclaw or Ninja, that'd go a long way. Maybe a little bit less AoE than Succession Foxclaw, but somewhere around there would really help. And currently there are some cancels for high spirits. They only float in the Awakened kit. That basically takes away the float. It does like a kick and you don't float. Get rid of that kick. Just make it float every time. That's the only feedback I've got here. And for Light 'em Up, if this could be made into a float instead of a stun, that would really help us to actually be able to do long range combos on the class. Because right now the only long range CC you have is Patraca. You can technically at the moment use it twice in a combo because it's a knockdown and it's a 4-second cooldown, but they are nerfing the cooldown. They're increasing the cooldown, which is a nerf, to 6 seconds, so we won't be able to use it twice anymore. So we don't really have a way of staying at range and getting consistent CCs on our targets. So that's why if this was made into a float, it'd be really good. So let's say you could do win Patraca, then you can even do Sun Shielder into flow render, or you could do Crow's Mark into flow render, Light 'em Up, and then finish with maybe like a captain's order to keep your range and kill them at range. At the moment, yes, you can re-CC with the stun, but it's very fiddly, because the opponent has to be standing for you to stun them. And on console, look, we got a lot of problems with performance and stutters and freezes that it's super fiddly on console to get people as they're standing up with the performance that we have. So just allowing this to be a flow would make our lives a lot easier. But you can make it work. Currently, if you do Wind Piercer, you do, let's say, Crow's Mark into Flow Patraca, you time your Windbreaker for as they're standing to stiff them, then you can easily get the stun off then. So it does work, but making a float would make it a lot more consistent for that ranged combo potential. But that is all my feedback for Corsair. If you guys got any feedback that you would like to leave in the comment section down below, please go ahead to do that, and I'll be interested in reading them. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.